The Switch physical library is huge. I couldn't find an exact number, but last I checked it was well over 1,300, and that was a couple of years ago. One of the coolest things about collecting for the Switch is that due to the high number of titles, there is potential for a lot of uniqueness in collections. Today, I want to feature some obscure Switch physical games that you do not own. Probably, anyway. This is not an expensive games list. You probably already know about stuff like Shantae that you don't own because it's a couple of $100s. No, this list is about really obscure stuff that you don't own because you've never heard of it. And at the time of the recording of this video, most of these games are still really cheap. So let's get into it, and before we do, just leave a like and some comment on some really obscure games that you own that you think nobody's ever heard of. The first game on this list is Eldrador Creatures Shadowfall. It's easy to see why nobody has ever heard of this game. It's a tactical RPG that is based on a kid's license, complete with its own series, toy line, and even an upcoming movie. I'm not sure who this game is for. I can't imagine the average person who just finished Final Fantasy Tactics is going to unwind by watching Eldrador Creatures. At the same time, I can't imagine many kids who watch that show to be into tactical RPGs. I bought it because I love the genre. I thought it was going to be kind of cheesy, but I didn't pay much for it, so I figured what the heck. But honestly, this is a fantastic game, and it's a shame that nobody's ever heard of it. You play as an army of creatures from different elemental worlds in a quest to stop the Shadow Dragon. As you go from world to world, you recruit new creatures. There are 20 in total, and a ton of diversity in how they look and feel. You get stuff like the Lava Golem, who has a huge health bar and smashes everything in his path, a spider that moves quickly, that deals tremendous damage, but also dies really quickly, so you gotta be really careful how you use them. All the creatures feel different and are a ton of fun to use. I love how the game is set up. You assemble a team of 3 or 4 creatures, but the way it's laid out, your creatures are never really under-leveled, so you can swap in and out at any time, and this keeps the game feeling fresh. It lets you experiment with different creatures to see how they interact. There's also a ton of personality. The dialogue is lighthearted, well-written, and funny. I genuinely enjoyed the cutscenes and laughing at the quirky characters, like the aforementioned Lava Golem, who's just constantly talking about smashing everything and never skips leg day, or the impeccably polite Nature Dragon, who has terrible poisonous breath, despite the fact that he brushes his teeth every day. The game is throwing silly stuff like that at you all the time, and it is genuinely charming. The battles all take place in single-screen arenas. There's a lot going on with the different obstacles and tiles that have different effects, like water that guarantees a critical hit, or walls that you could smash enemies into. There's enough interactivity in the environment to keep things interesting. There's also mana orbs that spawn around. Collecting one restores your monster's health and contributes to a shared mana pool that all of your creatures can access to use their specials. It's a cool system and something a little different than you typically see in tactics games. It's also really accessible. I think you could hand this over to a kid, let them play on really easy, and they'll have fun with it. At the same time, there are hard difficulties and new game pluses for more experienced players like me. It's just a fantastic game that nobody ever talks about. Even if you have no idea what the license is, definitely give it a whirl. If you love tactical RPGs, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I've seen this game go for 20 bucks on eBay, so it's not a big investment and definitely well worth your time. As I put together this list, I actually didn't know what the most obscure game is. I feel like nobody has ever heard of any of them, but if I had to pick the one that is probably the least heard of, it would be the next game. Silver Axe: The Honest Elf is an import-only physical release and a really fun platformer, which is kind of a Metroidvania light. There is an interconnected world, and you get new abilities as you progress, such as a double jump and an air dash. And while there is some backtracking involved, it more or less plays in a prettier linear fashion until near the end of the game. So you can go back and explore for hidden secrets and find missed collectibles, but each section is kind of its own little level, and you don't have the vastness that you typically see in the Metroidvania genre. It's a really fun game with a cool, cartoony graphical style. The combat is kind of simple at first. You have a basic 3-hit combo and a dash in each direction that you cancel out of attacks with. As you progress, you unlock runes, each corresponding to a different direction on the right stick, and combining runes in different ways, you unlock all sorts of different elemental powers. It's a really cool and elaborate system that gives you a lot to play with. You can assign 4 shortcuts so you're not always having to input, and there's also a list on the side that shows you different combinations you have unlocked. I really enjoyed what they did here. It's unique, and while it takes some getting used to, using the runes properly unlocks some really cool abilities. The emphasis here is on the boss fights. There are a lot of them. They are typically multi-phased, usually about 3 per boss, and have a ton of different attacks. They were really, really well done. The highlight of the game for me, and all of them were a ton of fun to fight. There's some branching paths and multiple endings depending on the choices you make and how you play the game. Despite the cuteness of all the characters, the story is pretty dark, and I won't give any spoilers, the ending I got was even darker. This is a fantastic hidden gem that nobody ever talks about. Don't go in expecting a vast Metroidvania like Hollow Knight, but if you're looking for a fun action platformer with some minor exploration elements, it is definitely worth checking out. The next game might be one of the most obscure 3D platformers released on the system. Effie actually has a really nice physical edition with a slipcover and some cool inserts, and I don't think anyone has ever heard of it. It's a 3D platformer, but it kind of reminds me of a PS2 game, and I don't think it's a bad thing. The story plays out like The Princess Bride, with a grandfather telling his granddaughter the story of a legendary knight, which is actually him, she just doesn't know it. The knight was cursed by an evil witch and robbed of his youth, so he embarks on a quest to defeat her and regain his youth. It starts out really simple. You have a tiny jump and no attack, but as you progress, you get a shield and unlock all sorts of different moves like double jumps, dashes, and various offensive moves and combos, all of which use the shield. The combat is simple and kind of button mashy, similar to what you'd expect from a game that harkens back to that era. There's a hub world which gives you access to each of the game's 5 levels, with some secrets sprinkled liberally throughout as well. Once you enter a level, you're kind of locked in and just have to complete it. There's no elaborate map or anything. The game does a really good job of just guiding you where you need to go by placing little rune stones around everywhere. Collecting these allows you to level up, and they also serve as a trail of breadcrumbs, so you're never really lost. It can get pretty tough though. The early levels are straightforward, but later on there's some really tricky platforming with moving platforms and instant death traps everywhere. The loading time between deaths can be kind of annoying, and you will definitely die in some of these sections, but they were a lot of fun. The camera does a nice job of keeping up, and the level of precision needed I found to be was just right. I really enjoyed my time with this game. It's a straightforward action platformer with a good challenge. It's not too long. The whole thing will take you maybe 4 hours or so to complete. Definitely worth your time and definitely a hidden gem. Kukoos, the Lost Pets, has every marker of shovelware you can imagine. I stumbled upon this game in a buy 2 get 1 free sale at GameStop for $17.99. It looked really cheesy. Definitely thought it was some low budget kids game, but there was nothing else available for my 3rd game, so I picked it up for free. It sat in my backlog forever, but I never heard anyone talking about it, so I thought it'd be good to try it for this episode and figured I could feature one garbage game to laugh at, but honestly, this game really blew me away. It's actually a really fun 3D platformer in the style of Super Mario 3D World. The layout is similar. There's a world map and each level has its own self-contained area, so you don't have a giant open world to traverse, and there are collectibles in every level, but they are really optional, so the focus is just on getting to the end. As the name implies, in each world you are presented with a new lost pet that you find, and then they become your ally to help you navigate the challenges of that world. Each of these pets has a different ability and add a lot of variety to the gameplay. The first world, you have a little lightning bug who helps illuminate dark areas and can stun enemies by blinding them. The second one gives you this little block that you carry over your head. He can turn into a platform at any time and you could swing on him like a vine, but while holding the block you can't really jump high. So it adds a lot of unique platforming challenges to the mix. It really was fun to navigate this thing. The third world gives you a little crab shell which you need to pass through bullet hell style passages, but you could also absorb bullets and now you could fire projectiles, which leads to a variety of different puzzles and battles, and it was really fun to use. And finally, the last world turns you into a ghost, allowing you to scare enemies and pass through obstacles. I love the platforming challenges here as it has you switching back and forth mid-jumps. It was really tricky. The way they use all these pets is brilliant. Every level was really interesting to play, and the game is also really hard. When I turned it on, I just assumed that you'd breeze through this. I was dying a ton. Platforming challenges were really difficult. The little enemies usually pose a threat, which not is typically the case in games like this. And every world ends in a boss, which takes advantage of the pet's abilities, and most of them are really difficult with multiple stages and a ton of attacks. This game is really a hidden gem. I understand why it's overlooked. The characters are all these weird little monkey things. The cover art is not super appealing, and it kind of looks low budget. In some sense it is, Gameplay's a little janky and I encountered a few bugs, but don't let that deter you from giving this game a whirl. As of the filming of this video, you could find the physical for under $20, and if you enjoy 3D platformers, it's a really solid game that offers a great challenge and a ton of unique gameplay mechanics. Finally, we have Kamen Rider: Memory of Heroes. At the time of this recording, this is the most expensive game on the list, but it's not because it's some kind of uber rare hidden gem that everybody wants. The fact is, this is a game that just was always expensive. I think when it first released, it retailed for about $70, which at the time was simply unheard of, especially for some obscure licensed Switch 1 game. It eventually went on sale for a more reasonable price, and that's why I snatched it up. But it's a game that kind of missed a good launch, probably because of the high price, and then it just never garnered any traction. It also doesn't help that this is an obscure Japanese license. There are a ton of Kamen Rider games in existence, but the American audience is not really familiar with them. I've played a few here and there, but I don't know much about the source material either. They clearly have a lot in common with the Power Rangers, although they are a little more insect themed. I'm not really sure which came first, although I think the Kamen Riders came before the Power Rangers, but you could fact check me on that. All that aside, this is a 3D beat 'em up that is kind of linear and plays like a 2D beat 'em up. You walk along, mobs of enemies come out, you beat them up, you walk to the next mob, and so on and so on. The combat is pretty fun. If that definitely doesn't feel like anything else out there. You have a ton of different costumes that you can switch between at any time. Each of these have their own powers and special moves, and later on you can combine them for different effects. This keeps the combat fresh, as I felt like you were always unlocking the moves to play around with, so it never got boring. The game kind of pulls a Symphony of the Night on you. You start off with all the forms intact, so you can play around a little bit with everything in the beginning, but you quickly lose access to them, and then you slowly get them back as the game progresses. It was a lot of fun experimenting with all the different abilities, and you get them so frequently that you never really have too much time before you're getting a new power or new special move to play around with. I really enjoyed this game. It still is kind of pricey, but you can get it on sale. I know it went on sale during the holidays for about $30. It's definitely worth it for that price. It does play pretty uniquely, and fans of Power Rangers or beat 'em ups in general should give this game a look.